Hello and welcome to News in Depth on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Among NATO members, Finland shares the longest stretch of land border with Russia. The Finns have a long and acrimonious history with their neighbour, having fought two defensive wars against them in just the 20th century. After Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, how are the Finns preparing for the possibility of yet another kinetic confrontation with Putin's belligerent Russia? Well, our very own Erin Darman, chief political correspondent, went over to Finland to ask that question. Erin, welcome.
Hello, Ashim.
Good to see you.
And you.
Thank you. So we're going to have a look at both of your reports in just a second. But let's start off with kind of what was your sense of the atmosphere? I mean, we see some interviews with people on the street, but generally, what was your sense?
Finland is a really interesting country. I mean, 5.5 million people live there. It's a small country, but it shares this massive border with Russia. It joined NATO 2 years ago, and that made that border NATO's longest border with Russia. And going there was a really interesting experience because on one hand you have Finns who are confident, who feel prepared, as you'll see in the report, but there's also Finns that feel afraid, that feel more and more scared about the Kremlin's threats. Obviously, just this week we saw what are alleged to be Russian drones in Polish airspace. These are the kinds of threats that just start to paint a picture of what the Kremlin is capable of in countries along the eastern flank.
Right.
And so this is the kind of picture that starts to...
So a lot of uncertainty.
A lot of uncertainty.
About... Okay, just very quickly before we start, did you notice a difference in the attitudes of the older generation and the younger generation? So the older generation will have had actual experience in the Second World War.
I didn't notice so much a difference between the older and younger generation, but I noticed kind of a generational trauma. I mean, this country has a long and a troubled history with Finland. And so throughout the generations, you get a sense that they are used to having Finland on their doorstep. They are also used to, in the last couple of years, having Vladimir Putin on their doorstep. Right. But there is still an unease and a fear that comes with that. And let's look at part one of this report.
Let's do that. Let's have a look.
Let's have a look at that.
Mm-hmm.
When NATO refers to the eastern flank and to the threat of an attack from the Kremlin, this is what the alliance is talking about. I'm standing on Finnish territory, and just through this fence behind me is Russia. In fact, the two countries share a 1,300-kilometre border. It's the longest line of contact with Russia of any NATO member country, and that's why Finland is preparing for the worst. Sitting north of the Baltic Sea, more than 5.5 million people call Finland home. And those walking the streets in the eastern town of Lappeenranta are closer than most to the country's neighbour, Vladimir Putin.
Let's hope that Putin.
We are more and more scared.
I don't think about Russia all the time, but daily still.
Soviet warplanes darkening the sky of Finland.
These Finns share a long and troubled history with Russia, including a brutal civil conflict in the early 1900s and fighting off an invasion during World War II. Since Russia launched its full-scale war on Ukraine, Finland reversed its long-held military non-alignment, joining NATO in 2023 amid fears that it could be next. Now, TVP World has been granted exclusive access to the geographical line separating the West from the Kremlin's grip. This is how you know that we're getting close to Finland's border with Russia. This is a fishmonger, a hotel, a restaurant, but all these signs in Finnish are translated into Russian. A few hours later, including a stretch of driving on the largely empty road to St. Petersburg, we arrive.
On the other side of the fence, that's Russia.
And have you been to Russia before?
Yeah, as a little boy, I made some trips with my family on the Russian side. We were living near the Russian border, and now later on I have done some work-related trips to the Russia.
Do you ever communicate with the Russians? I mean, given you're a border guard on this side, is it ever possible, or does it ever happen that you end up communicating with them, that you meet with some of their border guards?
If you mean that we now encountered the Russian side patrol, then I would salute them, and then we would just continue on what we are doing. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Mikko Kallinen. I would say we are prepared in all kinds of security situations.
Including potential war?
Including war.
But this fence is not designed to defend a military operation, instead stood up to face a different type of conflict, the alleged weaponization of migrants.
It is hybrid war.
That's Finland's Interior Minister Mari Rantanen, sitting down with us in the capital Helsinki, almost 2 years after her government shut all border crossings with Russia.
Now our border situation is calm, but of course it's tense and it can change very rapidly.
Down the road from the Interior Ministry, we meet with a former diplomat and commander for the Finnish border guard, who specialises in hybrid threats. A reminder that the Baltic Sea has been home to several incidents of suspected Russian sabotage, including the cutting of undersea cables.
After the collapse of Soviet Union and communism, as we thought it would collapse, there was a peaceful period, which now is over. And I think that the struggle has started again, where they are targeting Western nations and coalitions.
He also has a sobering warning about Russia's intent.
The rest of us say that if you want to have peace, prepare for war. They think that if you want to have peace, wage war.
So how are Finnish civilians preparing on the ground, and what could happen next? More exclusive details in the second part of Fight for Finland, inside the country with NATO's longest Russia border.
Yeah, it's a great report, Aaron. I really enjoyed that. Now, a couple of things about that struck me. The first was the border guard. And he, for a country with such a long border with Russia, he seemed very confident that they were prepared for anything. I mean, what do you think? I mean, what did you see? Did you understand the thinking behind that?
Very confident. And it's interesting because in part 2, you'll see a Major General say, look, we are preparing, but we don't know if we're prepared until something happens.
Right.
So he was very confident. But what was also interesting is this is a guy who, as you saw there, has lived pretty much his whole life on the Russian border. He's been to Russia, he engages with Russian border guards on a semi-regular basis. So I guess there's a feeling that, well, it's a threat that I know.
Right.
So that's what I noticed with him. And he obviously took us along the border. That fence, as I mentioned there as well, it's not for a military operation, but for this alleged weaponization of migrants, what the minister is calling a hybrid war.
Yeah, I want to come to the minister in just a second. But did you see military installations, for example, to stop a land invasion?
No.
You didn't
So this is
interesting.
This is fascinating because I expected that, actually. I mean, there's a zone of approximately 3 kilometres where it's effectively no man's land.
Right.
People can live there if they have residences there, but it's blocked off to the public. So to get to the border, you need to drive with approved personnel to get into that zone and then to the border. But in terms of any sort of military installations, there was nothing at that point. There are, of course, border crossings. They've all been closed since last year. And there are also areas, of course, where Russia, you can see it over a stretch of water. So there are key danger points, shall we say, or high-risk areas where they might have that. But we didn't see that at this particular point of the border.
Interesting. Now, just very quickly before we move on to the second part of your report, you spoke with the Interior Minister, and she was talking about hybrid warfare and the use of migrants at the border and so on. But the border was quiet. How did the Finns deal with the migrant crisis?
Well, in a sense, they closed the border. So the first step was to shut the border. After, of course, much consult, it's a major decision, particularly given that There are people living along that border who are Russian on the Finnish side. There are Lappeenranta, the town where we spoke to some locals. I mean, this used to be full of Russian tourists during the summer period.
Right.
Now the Russians don't go there anymore. The border's closed.
Right.
That's how Finland responded in the first instance, and they've maintained that now. So they've kept the border closed. It's closed for the foreseeable future. I also asked the Minister whether or not Finland as a whole will always be somewhat exposed, because this fence is only going to be built for about 200 kilometres along
Right.
the border. So high-risk areas, as I pointed out.
Right.
They can't build a fence along 1,300 kilometres.
kilometres.
So she accepted that Finland does have some kind of inherent sense of exposure to Russia and, frankly, has to deal with that.
Yeah, perhaps they're using electronic techniques to survey
Quite possibly,
and
quite
respond to that. Should we have a quick look at your second?
Yes, let's. Because
report?
this one is how Finns are actually preparing on the ground. So
Okay, yeah, looking forward to that. Let's go.
Major General Jarmo Vähätiitto, ACOS J6. We don't know are we ready for the war, but we prepare every day, every single day, be ready for war.
in the heart of Helsinki, we have this parking building here. There's a car park, but underneath there's something else, a civil shelter. And I'm here with a civil defence instructor. My name's Aaron. And we're going to head down, and you're going to show me what this is all about.
Let's go.
Excellent. Seven flights of stairs into the earth, TVP World is gaining an exclusive look at a sports arena that could house and save the lives of up to 6,000 people. Bomb-proof doors, beds and storage, all signs that while locals are playing floorball for fun, the real reason for this cavernous hall is not.
By legislation, we have 72 hours time frame to convert these premises to full CBRNE protective shelter. We have been training it that we can convert this one somewhere between 6 or 8 hours to full CBRNE protective
So
shelter.
less than a day. I mean, it's effectively a working day.
But it is quite hard work.
It's one of a handful of mega bunkers in the country, with Finland boasting more than 50,000 civil defence shelters, many of them privately integrated into buildings under law. Altogether, they deliver space for about 87% of the population, or 4.8 million people.
There's always a situation where our security will break. It depends on several factors, but the main idea is that we are not a straight target.
As well as where people can stay, how officials will communicate during a crisis is also top of mind. This state-owned company delivers secure technology for emergency services. We've got fire, we've got navy, we've got police, healthcare and ambulance. And I have, on our way through, spotted this one, which looks like a phone.
Yeah.
It looks like the iPhone that I carry around
are
with me.
having priority also for authorities, which means that if it's a crowded situation, the authorities are having access. As a private person, probably you will face some troubles, concerts or sport events or any kind of big accidents. Probably the message doesn't go through.
One industry expert spelling out what needs to happen to safeguard transmission.
As the societies are so dependent on communication, it's very important to harden the networks, harden the services, make sure that there are alternative paths for communication. If one fails, then another one can take over. This is not just a Finnish question, this is a global question, and therefore we need to have absolutely global standards.
Finland is the 31st member of the North Atlantic Treaty.
More than 2 years ago, Finland joined the NATO alliance to better protect the country from Russia and sign up to Article 5, the clause that says an attack on one is an attack on all. In fact, Finland's first NATO command centre began operations this month, roughly 250 kilometres from St. Petersburg. But a leading Finnish research director says the accession did not go entirely as expected.
For a short time at least, people felt somehow relieved that, okay, now we are there and we know how it works. There is this Article 5, there is this and that. Once we got there, we realized that, okay, it's not that clear, that there is always a discussion on what it actually is.
And despite boasting almost 900,000 trained defence reservists and wanting to push the age limit up to 65 so they can hit 1 million, the country's top military brass are under no illusions over the fight they could face.
First line is homeland defense. We have to be able to start defend Finland alone. That's our baseline. And if here is some allied nations like Swedish, Norwegian, maybe Baltic nations or UK, we fight with them. And third line is fight under NATO umbrella.
Finland is both a country on edge and in a state of calm. I've spoken to some locals who are scared of what Vladimir Putin could do next. Others are confident and unafraid. Officials say they're prepared for anything, including a war waged by Russia. In Finland, I'm Aaron Darman with this special report for TVP World.
So really interesting. One statistic that really caught my eye was the 87% of the population can be fitted into these shelters.
4.8 million people.
I mean, is this a lesson other countries can learn from?
For sure, for sure. I mean, 5.5 million people in Finland, 4.8 it would be able to cover in various shelters. An interesting stat to add to that is that 85% are private shelters. So that under law, many of the builds need to have a shelter under the building. So what you saw there is an example of the 15%, a public shelter where people would go in case of a crisis, but often people would be able to shelter in their own building or in a building next door. So it is something that many countries, including Poland, could learn from.
Right.
Because if the attacks start to come, then people in Finland, for example, know where to go.
Right, well, I think, and the thing is, of course, Finland's always been cautious of its neighbour. Even after the breakup of the Soviet Union, and therefore perhaps they've always thought that way, and maybe that's why they're so advanced. Now, sorry.
It's funny you say that, because that is precisely the sentiment and the message that I heard from almost everyone I spoke to in Finland. This preparation did not start in 2022. Right. It did not start in 2014. It started 80 years ago.
Right. Right, okay, well, it doesn't surprise me after the two wars they fought last century. But the other thing I want to say before we run out of time is that they see NATO as the third line of defence, right? So first, we look after ourselves, our border guard. Second is our allies, and the third is NATO. What's the thinking behind that?
It's fascinating. I mean, and it's very different from other countries and leaders of other countries I've spoken to in, for example, the Baltic states, who say, well, we're covered under NATO Article 5 and NATO will support us. Well, Finland says we need to protect ourselves first, then our allies, and then the NATO umbrella. So in a way, they're quite realistic about the situation that if Russia comes across the border, they need to be able to, in that moment, respond and then rely on their allies.
Yeah, which I think is pretty sensible. I mean, we heard that professor from the university saying, well, we realise that Article 5 isn't perhaps as clear-cut as many people would like to think it is, and it doesn't automatically mean that suddenly there'll be planes and bullets coming from other NATO countries.
And Finland had that exact experience where they thought, oh yeah, we'll sign up to Article 5, sign up to NATO. Okay, as the research director there said, maybe it's not as clear-cut. And I want to make a quick point while I'm here, that you can catch both of these on YouTube, Part 1 and Part 2. And the reason we're trialling a Part 1 and Part 2 is basically our ability to engage with digital content.
Right.
Let's make it faster. Let's make it shorter, 2 parts, and see if that engages a younger audience and an audience that is able to take it in. And
we look forward to seeing how it goes. Bite-sized pieces.
Exactly.
5 minutes at a time.
Exactly.
Not too difficult at all. Aaron, thank you so much. It was great to see you again. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of News in Depth. Don't go away, though. Lots more coming up. Goodbye.